The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know the exact time because I was staring at my alarm clock, wondering if the ringing was part of a dream or a reality. The voice on the other end was professional, distant. "Miss Vexler? This is Hawthorne and Associates. I'm calling about your sister, Juniper." My heart dropped. Phone calls at this hour are never good news. What about her? I managed to croak. "I'm sorry to inform you that Miss Juniper Vexler passed away 3 days ago in a car accident." The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 days. She'd been gone for 3 days, and I was just finding out now. "Miss Vexler, you're listed as the sole beneficiary of your sister's estate. We need you to come to Montana as soon as possible for the reading of the will." Welcome back to Her Real Stories, and if you're new here, welcome to our family where we share the most incredible true stories that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about people. Today's story is going to blow your mind, so buckle up. If you love jaw-dropping real stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Beneficiary? What could my sister possibly have left me? Last I knew, she was barely getting by on some cattle ranch in Montana, living paycheck to paycheck like most of us. I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. My sister didn't have much money. Ma'am, your sister left you the Wildfire Ranch, approximately 3,000 acres and liquid assets totaling just over $13 million. The phone slipped from my hand. $13 million. I sat there in my tiny apartment in Cleveland, Ohio, staring at the water stain on my ceiling that looked like a sad elephant, trying to process what I'd just heard. Juniper, my little sister who'd moved out west years ago to chase some dream about ranch life, had somehow accumulated $13 million. The next few days passed in a blur. I called my job at the insurance office and told them I needed time off for a family emergency. My boss, Mr. Kirkpatrick, wasn't thrilled, but what could he say when someone dies? I booked a flight to Montana with money I didn't really have, packed a small suitcase with a few decent clothes I owned, and tried to wrap my head around the fact that Juniper was gone. Really gone. The flight gave me too much time to think. I pressed my face against the small airplane window and watched the landscape change below me. First the familiar grid of Ohio farmland, then the vast emptiness of the Great Plains, and finally the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains rising like ancient monuments against the sky. I found myself remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. Juniper at 8 years old, collecting wildflowers in mason jars. Juniper at 16, arguing with our parents about her plans to study agriculture instead of nursing like they wanted. The last time I'd seen her, 5 years ago at our mother's funeral, when she'd hugged me goodbye and said, "Don't be such a stranger, Marigold." I'd promised to visit, to call more often, to stay in touch. But life got busy, and phone calls got awkward, and somehow 5 years had slipped by without me even realizing it. Now she was gone, and all those missed conversations, all those unasked questions, all that lost time could never be recovered. What had her life been like out there? Had she been lonely? Had she thought about me? Had she wondered why I never came to visit, never called just to chat, never seemed interested in the life she'd built? The guilt sat in my stomach like a stone. When the plane touched down in Billings, I felt like I was landing on an alien planet. Everything was so open, so vast. Back in Cleveland, you could barely see the sky between all the buildings. Here, it stretched on forever. A man in a crisp suit was waiting for me at baggage claim, holding a sign with my name on it. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not an airport in Montana. "Miss Vexler? I'm Camden Hawthorne." We spoke on the phone. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of confidence that comes from handling other people's money. As we drove through the Montana countryside, he filled me in on the basics. Juniper had been coming back from town when her truck slid on black ice and hit a tree. She died instantly. Your sister was quite a remarkable woman, Camden said as we passed field after field of open land. She built something really special out here. I had no idea she had so much money, I admitted, feeling guilty about my ignorance. The ranch has been incredibly successful. Your sister had a real gift for business, and she invested wisely. The cattle operation alone brings in over $2 million a year. $2 million a year. I made $32,000 at the insurance office, and I thought I was doing okay. When we pulled up to the Wildfire Ranch, I actually gasped. It wasn't the rundown operation I'd imagined. The main house was a beautiful log structure with a wraparound porch and flower boxes that, even in late fall, looked well maintained. Beyond it, I could see barns, outbuildings, and pastures stretching to the horizon with cattle dotting the landscape like chocolate chips on a cookie. But it wasn't just the visual that overwhelmed me. It was everything else. The sound of cattle lowing in the distance, a low, peaceful rumble that seemed to vibrate through the ground. The smell of hay and leather, and something clean and earthy that I couldn't identify, but that felt like the opposite of city air. The vastness of it all, the way the sky seemed to go on forever, without a single building to break its line. I stepped out of Camden's car and just stood there, breathing it in. In Cleveland, I lived in a third-floor apartment where I could touch both walls of my bedroom if I stretched out my arms. Here, I could walk in any direction for what looked like miles without hitting a fence. This is mine now, I whispered. Every acre, Camden confirmed. The reading of the will took place in Juniper's study, a room that smelled like leather and wood polish. As Camden read the legal language, I found myself staring at photos of my sister with various people I didn't recognize. Happy photos. Photos of someone living a full, rich life. When had we stopped talking regularly? When had I stopped knowing who she really was? The entirety of the estate, including the ranch, livestock, equipment, and all financial assets, goes to my sister, Marigold Vexler. Camden read in his professional voice. It is my hope that she will find the peace here that has always eluded her in the city. Peace that had always eluded me. Even in death, Juniper knew me better than I knew myself. After Camden left, I walked through the house like a ghost, touching furniture, opening drawers, trying to understand this life my sister had built. The place was beautiful but felt empty without her in it. I was sitting on the front porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors they don't make in Ohio, when my phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but the voice was. Mom. My heart stopped. Literally stopped, for what felt like a full minute. Kyler. My son. My baby boy who is now 35 years old and hadn't spoken to me in 18 years. Not since the divorce, when his father convinced him I was the villain in our family story. I heard about Aunt Juniper. I'm sorry for your loss. The words were stiff, formal, like he was reading from a script. But they were the first words he'd spoken to me since he was 17 years old. Thank you, I managed. That means a lot. I also heard about the inheritance. There it was. Of course he'd heard. Word travels fast in small towns. Somebody leaked it to the local paper before the ink on the will was even dry, he continued. Listen, Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe this is a chance for us to reconnect. I know it's been a long time, but family is family, right? Hope bloomed in my chest like a flower after rain. After 18 years of silence, my son wanted to reconnect. Maybe Juniper's death wasn't just about grief. Maybe it was about new beginnings too. I'd like that, Kyler. I'd like that very much. Great. Actually, I'm free tomorrow. I could drive up to Montana, help you figure out what to do with everything. It's a lot for one person to handle. Something in his tone made me pause. There was an eagerness there that felt a little too sharp, a little too hungry. That's very thoughtful of you. Mom, let's be honest. You've never handled anything like this before. A ranch? Cattle? Business decisions involving millions of dollars? You're going to need help, and I've got experience with large-scale operations. The hope in my chest flickered. There it was. The assumption that I was too stupid, too inexperienced, too much of a small-town insurance worker to handle my own inheritance. What kind of experience? I asked carefully. I've been working in property development for the past 10 years. I know about land values, investment opportunities, tax implications. You're sitting on a gold mine, Mom, but you need someone who knows how to maximize its potential. Maximize its potential. Not preserve Juniper's legacy. Not honor what she'd built. Maximize potential. I appreciate the offer, Kyler. Why don't you come up tomorrow and we can talk? Perfect. I'll be there by noon. After he hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness and felt a familiar knot form in my stomach. The same knot I'd felt when his father used to explain to me why my opinions were wrong, why my ideas were silly, why I needed him to make the important decisions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through Juniper's house, looking at the life she'd built. In her bedroom, I found a journal on the nightstand. I almost didn't open it. It felt like invading her privacy, but something made me flip to the last entry. March 10th, left Marigold a voicemail today, but she didn't call back. She sounded tired on her message. That job of hers is sucking the life out of her, and she doesn't even see it. I wish I could convince her to come out here, but she's scared. Always been scared of taking risks. If something happens to me, she's going to inherit all this, and I hope it gives her the courage to finally live instead of just surviving. I closed the journal with tears in my eyes. Even planning her will, Juniper had been thinking about me, about my life, about my happiness. The next morning, I was having coffee on the porch when a shiny black SUV pulled into the driveway. My stomach clenched as I watched a man get out. Tall, well-dressed, with the kind of confidence that comes from always getting what you want. My son. He looked so much like his father that for a moment, I felt like I was looking at a ghost. Same dark hair, same sharp features, same way of moving like he owned whatever space he was in. Mom. He walked up the porch steps with his arms open for a hug that felt more like a business greeting than a reunion. Kyler. You look good. And he did. Expensive suit, expensive watch, expensive shoes. Whatever he'd been doing for the past 18 years, it had been profitable. You too, Mom. This place is incredible. His eyes were already scanning the property, calculating. Have you had it appraised? I just found out about it yesterday, Kyler. I haven't had time to do anything. He nodded like that was exactly what he'd expected. That's why I'm here. We need to move fast on something like this. The market's hot right now for ranch properties, especially ones this size and this well-maintained. Move fast on what? Selling, obviously. Mom, you can't possibly want to live out here, in the middle of nowhere. You're a city person. Always have been. I bristled at the certainty in his voice. How would you know what kind of person I am? You haven't talked to me in 18 years. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, maybe. Or impatience. Look, I know we have history, but let's focus on the practical stuff right now. You've got assets worth over $15 million sitting here. In the right hands, properly developed, this land could be worth 30, maybe 40 million. Developed how? Subdivisions. Luxury cabins. Maybe a resort. This area is prime for vacation properties. Rich people love this whole cowboy fantasy thing. The casual way he dismissed Juniper's life's work as a cowboy fantasy made my blood pressure spike. This was your aunt's home, Kyler. She loved this place. And I'm sure she did. But she's gone now, and you've got a chance to set yourself up for life. For both of us, actually. There it was. Both of us. What do you mean? Well, obviously, you'll need someone to manage the development process. I've got the experience, the connections. We could be partners. Partners? After 18 years of silence, he wanted to be partners in spending my inheritance. I need to think about this, Kyler. It's a lot to process. Of course. But Mom, you have to understand, time is money with something like this. Every day we wait is money lost. The way he said, we made my skin crawl. Why don't you stay for dinner? The ranch foreman is supposed to come by this afternoon. I'd like to hear what he has to say about the operation. Kyler's expression tightened. Ranch foreman. Apparently Juniper had a whole team running this place. I want to understand how it all works before I make any decisions. Over dinner, Kyler's questions became more pointed, more urgent. Any outside investors in the ranch? Any silent partners I should know about? He cut his steak with unnecessary force. What about bank accounts? How many are there? Are they all in your name now? I set down my fork and stared at him. Why are you asking me all this? Just trying to get a complete picture of what we're dealing with here. You know what I mean. But I was beginning to understand exactly what he meant, and it wasn't what a loving son should mean. After dinner, the question I'd been avoiding finally came up. Who said I was going to sell it? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Kyler stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. You can't be serious about keeping it. Why not? Mom, be realistic. You're 58 years old. You can't just decide to become a rancher overnight. The dismissal in his voice was so familiar, so much like his father's, that I felt myself shrinking back into old patterns. The woman who apologized for having opinions, who deferred to the men in her life, because they obviously knew better. But then I looked out at the land Juniper had loved, the life she'd built, the legacy she'd entrusted to me, and something straightened in my spine. You're right. I don't know anything about ranching, but I can learn. Watch me. The words came out harder than I'd intended, and Kyler's eyes narrowed.
Fine.
But when this whole fantasy falls apart, don't expect me to bail you out. I wouldn't dream of it. We ate lunch in tense silence. Kyler kept checking his phone and making comments about property values and development opportunities. I kept thinking about Juniper's journal, about her hope that this inheritance would give me courage. At 2 o'clock, a dusty pickup truck pulled into the driveway. A man in worn jeans and a cowboy hat got out and walked toward the house with the easy confidence of someone who belonged here. You must be Marigold, he said, touching the brim of his hat. I'm Rex Morrison, ranch foreman. Sorry for your loss. Juniper was a hell of a woman. Thank you. This is my son, Kyler. Rex nodded at Kyler, who barely looked up from his phone. I wanted to talk to you about how things work around here, Rex continued. Juniper left some instructions about what to do if anything happened to her. What kind of instructions? Well, first thing is, don't let anybody pressure you into making quick decisions about the ranch. She was real specific about that. I glanced at Kyler, who had suddenly become very interested in our conversation. She also made sure the ranch had enough money in reserve to keep operating for years. Reinvested profits back into the business instead of taking them out. Smart woman. Figured if something happened to her, you'd need time to learn the ropes without worrying about cash flow. How much time? The way she set it up? 5 years, easy. Maybe more if you're careful. Kyler stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Mom, you can't seriously be considering spending 5 years of your life playing cowgirl. Rex's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Playing? Rex repeated. Son, your aunt built one of the most successful cattle operations in the state. Wasn't nothing playful about it. I didn't mean to offend, Kyler backtracked, but his tone suggested he absolutely had meant to offend. I just think my mother needs to be practical about her limitations. What limitations would those be? Rex asked. She's never run a business. She's never lived in a rural area. She doesn't know anything about cattle or land management. Neither did Juniper when she started, Rex said mildly. She learned. Some folks have the capacity to grow, and some don't. The insult was delivered so smoothly that it took Kyler a second to realize he'd been called incapable of growth. Rex spent the next 2 hours walking me through the ranch operations. The cattle, the grazing rotations, the seasonal rhythms that governed everything. It was complex, sure, but not incomprehensible. And there was something about the work that felt honest in a way my insurance job never had. Kyler trailed behind us, making occasional comments about quick profits and development opportunities, but I found myself tuning him out. Even if Mom wanted to keep the ranch, the tax implications alone would be overwhelming, he said as we stood looking at a herd of cattle. Juniper took care of that too, Rex replied. Set up the whole thing as a conservation easement. Tax benefits, out the wazoo. Conservation easement? Kyler's voice sharpened. Means the land can't be developed. Stays agricultural forever. I watched the color drain from Kyler's face. That can't be right. Those can be reversed. Not this one. Juniper tied it to a state conservation program. Ironclad, can't be undone. The look Kyler shot me was pure fury, as if I had somehow arranged this specifically to spite him. Mom, you need to contest this. This is a massive financial loss. Is it? I asked. Rex, how much does the ranch make annually? Good years, about $2.5 million. Bad years, still over $1 million. More money than I'd made in my entire working life, and this was somehow a loss. But think about the development potential, Kyler pressed. You could make 30, 40 million with the right project.
Could, Rex said.
Or could lose everything when the market crashes, like what happened to those folks who tried to develop the Peterson Ranch 5 years ago. What happened to them? I asked. Lost everything. Turns out building luxury cabins in the middle of nowhere isn't as profitable as folks think, especially when half your target market loses their jobs in a recession. Kyler's jaw was clenched so tight, I thought he might crack a tooth. There are always risks in business, he said. Sure are, Rex agreed. That's why smart folks stick with what works. Cattle will always be worth something. Land will always be worth something. People will always need food. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself listening more to Rex and less to Kyler. Rex talked about sustainable practices, about working with the land instead of against it, about building something that would last generations. Kyler talked about quick profits and market opportunities and maximizing short-term gains. By evening, I'd made up my mind about something important. Kyler, I'm not selling the ranch. He stared at me like I'd announced my intention to fly to the moon. Mom, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. This is insane. You're throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime because some cowboy filled your head with romantic nonsense. The dismissal in his voice was the last straw. Kyler, I want you to leave.
What?
I want you to leave.
Now.
Mom, you're being emotional. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. Get out. He stood there for a moment, looking like he wanted to argue further. Then his expression shifted to something calculating.
Feeny.
But when you change your mind, when reality sets in, don't expect me to drop everything to help you. I won't. After he left, I sat on the porch with Rex, watching the sunset. That was hard, Rex said. Yeah, it was. Want to talk about why you really decided to keep the ranch? I thought about it. Because when he talked about developing it, all I could think about was tearing down everything Juniper built. And when you talked about working the land, all I could think about was building on what she started. Rex nodded. She'd be proud of you. I hope so. That night, I called Camden Hawthorne. I want to understand exactly what legal protections Juniper put in place, I said. Quite a few, actually. She was very thorough. Why? Because I think my son is going to try to contest the will. On what grounds? Incompetence, probably. Undue influence. whatever his lawyers can come up with. Camden was quiet for a moment. Miss Vexler, your sister anticipated this possibility. She left very specific instructions about what to do if anyone tried to challenge your inheritance. What kind of instructions? Let's just say she was a very good judge of character, and she prepared for various contingencies. A week passed. I spent my days learning about ranch operations, working alongside Rex and the other hands, getting my hands dirty and my mind clear. The work was hard but satisfying in a way my desk job had never been. Then one morning, a black town car pulled into the driveway. 3 men in expensive suits got out. Lawyers, Rex muttered. Can smell 'em from a mile away. The lead lawyer was older, gray-haired, with the kind of smile that costs $500 an hour. Miss Vexler? I'm Harrison Blake, representing your son Kyler in a legal matter. What kind of legal matter? We're filing to contest the will on grounds of undue influence and your lack of capacity to manage such substantial assets. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My own son was trying to have me declared incompetent. On what basis? Your complete lack of experience with ranch management, your age, your susceptibility to influence from individuals who stand to benefit from your poor decision-making. He glanced at Rex as he said it. I see. However, we're prepared to settle this matter quietly. If you agree to sell the ranch and split the proceeds with your son, we'll withdraw the legal challenge. And if I don't, then we'll be forced to pursue a lengthy and expensive legal battle that will tie up the estate for months. I looked at these 3 men in their expensive suits, trying to intimidate me into giving up my inheritance, and something cold and hard settled in my chest. Get off my property. Miss Vexler, I don't think you understand the seriousness. I understand perfectly. You're threatening me. On my own land. Rex, do we have a shotgun? Several, Rex replied cheerfully. Get off my property.
Now.
They left, but I knew they'd be back. That afternoon, Camden came to the ranch with a thick folder and a grim expression. They filed the papers this morning, he said. The first court date was set just weeks away, faster than anyone expected. Can they win? They can try. But Marigold, I need to show you something. He opened the folder and pulled out a video camera. Your sister asked me to give you this if anyone ever tried to challenge the will. What is it? Watch. He turned on the camera, and suddenly Juniper was there, sitting in the very room where we were now, looking directly into the camera.
Marigold.
If you're watching this, it means someone is trying to take away what I left you. I'm going to guess it's your son. My heart clenched. Even from beyond the grave, Juniper knew me better than I knew myself. I want you to know that I didn't leave you this ranch because I felt sorry for you, or because I thought you needed taking care of. I left it to you because you're the strongest person I know, even if you don't see it yourself. Tears were streaming down my face. I also want you to know that I hired a private investigator to look into Kyler's business dealings. What I found is in the folder Camden is going to give you. Use it if you need to. The video ended. Camden handed me another folder, this one much thicker. Your nephew has been involved in some questionable business practices, he said carefully. Real estate schemes mostly, taking advantage of elderly investors. I opened the folder and felt sick. Page after page of documentation. Complaints from victims. Police reports. A pattern of behavior going back years. Why hasn't he been prosecuted? He's smart. Always stays just on the legal side of things. Technically legal, but morally bankrupt. I stared at the evidence of what my son had become. Not just selfish, but actively harmful. A predator who targeted vulnerable people. Juniper thought you might need leverage, Camden continued. If he tries to paint you as incompetent, you can paint him as a fraud. The weeks leading up to the hearing passed in a blur of preparation and learning. I spent my days working alongside Rex and the other hands, my hands getting calloused, my back getting stronger, my understanding of the ranch operations growing deeper every day. Rex taught me to mend fences, showing me how to stretch wire tight and secure it properly. A good fence is like a promise, he said, checking my work. It keeps your cattle where they belong and tells your neighbors you respect boundaries. I learned to recognize the signs of illness in cattle, how to spot a lame animal in a herd of hundreds, how to read the weather patterns that could mean the difference between a successful season and a disaster. My first week, I left a gate open and spent 3 hours helping the hands round up escaped cattle. I was mortified, but Rex just shrugged. Juniper did the same thing her second week. Difference is she learned from it. You will too. The most remarkable experience was helping deliver a calf. A cow had been in labor for hours, and Rex called me over to assist. Sometimes they need a little help, he said, rolling up his sleeves. I watched in amazement as new life entered the world, slippery and struggling and absolutely perfect. The mother cow immediately began cleaning her baby, her maternal instincts taking over completely. That never gets old, Rex said, washing his hands at the barn spigot. Watching something come into the world, knowing you helped make it possible. Standing there in the Montana dawn, covered in hay and exhaustion and satisfaction, I understood something fundamental about the work. This wasn't just a business. It was a cycle of life and death and renewal that connected you to something bigger than yourself. Kyler's lawyers had been busy too. They'd found a psychiatrist willing to testify that sudden inheritance could trigger psychological instability in older adults. They'd gathered evidence of my unfitness, my lack of business experience, my emotional decision-making, my susceptibility to manipulation. The day of the hearing, I walked into that courthouse wearing jeans, boots, and a determination that surprised even me. Kyler was there with his expensive legal team, looking confident and wronged. The perfect picture of a concerned son trying to protect his poor, confused mother. His lawyer painted me as a naive woman who'd been manipulated by greedy ranch hands into making irrational decisions about assets I couldn't possibly understand. When it was my turn to testify, I stood up and looked directly at my son. Your Honor, my son hasn't spoken to me in 18 years. He didn't call when I got cancer 5 years ago. He didn't visit when I was in the hospital. He didn't check on me during the pandemic when I was alone and scared. But the day he heard about the inheritance, suddenly he cared. And here's why. I pulled out the folder Camden had given me. I'd like to submit evidence about my son's business practices. Evidence that shows he's made a career out of taking advantage of vulnerable people. The look of horror on Kyler's face was worth everything. Your Honor, this is completely irrelevant, his lawyer objected. Actually, it's very relevant, I continued, because it shows his pattern of behavior. It shows what happens when he thinks someone is too old or too weak to protect themselves. I spent the next hour detailing every complaint, every victim, every scheme. I watched Kyler's confident expression crumble as his true character was laid bare for the court. During this testimony, several witnesses spoke on my behalf. Tom, one of the ranch hands, testified about my commitment to learning the operation. She's out there every morning before dawn, eager to understand every aspect of the business, he said. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, spoke about Juniper's wishes. Juniper talked about her sister all the time. Said Marigold was the strongest person she knew, just hadn't found the right opportunity to show it. Meanwhile, Kyler squirmed as the lawyers cross-examined him about his shady dealings, his voice getting smaller and more defensive with each question. When I finished, the judge was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Blake, do you have any response to these allegations against your client? Kyler's lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a toad. Your Honor, these are just allegations. Allegations with police reports and witness statements, I interrupted. Your Honor, I may not know everything about ranching, but I know exactly what kind of person my son is. And that's why my sister left everything to me and nothing to him. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Not only did he dismiss the competency challenge, but he ordered Kyler to pay all court costs and legal fees. As we walked out of the courthouse, Kyler grabbed my arm. "You've made a huge mistake, Mom. You could have had a partner, someone to help you. Now you have nothing." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. "Kyler, I have a successful business, beautiful land, good people who work with me, and the knowledge that I'm building something worthwhile. You have a history of cheating people and a legal bill you can't afford. Who really has nothing?" He stared at me, probably seeing me clearly for the first time in his life. Not as a victim or a resource, but as a person who wouldn't be pushed around anymore. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is."
And it was.
I never heard from him again. 6 months later, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when Rex joined me with 2 beers. "How are you feeling about everything?" he asked. "Good. Really good." And I was. The ranch was thriving. I'd learned more about business in 6 months than I had in 20 years at the insurance company. I discovered muscles I didn't know I had, and a strength I'd forgotten I possessed. "Any regrets?" Rex asked. I thought about Kyler, about the son I'd lost long before I ever inherited a dime, about the relationship that had been broken by greed and selfishness, and the poison his father had fed him. "I regret that he never got to know Juniper," I said finally. "I regret that he never learned what she tried to teach me." "What's that?" "That the best things in life can't be bought or sold or developed or maximized. They can only be built, day by day, with your own hands and your own heart." Rex nodded. "Juniper would be proud of you." "I think she would." As the stars came out over the Montana sky, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years.
Peace.
Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of knowing I was exactly where I belonged, doing exactly what I was meant to do. My sister's final gift hadn't been the money or the land. It had been the chance to discover who I really was when I stopped letting other people define me. And that, it turned out, was worth more than $13 million. The months that followed brought their own challenges and victories. Rex taught me everything about cattle management, from understanding breeding cycles to recognizing signs of illness in the herd. I learned about pasture rotation, about reading weather patterns, about the delicate balance between profit and sustainability. The ranch hands, initially skeptical of the city woman who'd inherited their workplace, gradually warmed to my genuine interest in learning. They shared stories about Juniper, about the changes she'd made over the years, about the respect she'd earned through hard work and fair dealing. I hired a business manager, a sharp woman named Stella who'd worked with agricultural operations for 20 years. She helped me understand the financial side of things, the budgets and projections and tax implications that seemed overwhelming at first but gradually became as familiar as balancing my old checkbook. Winter in Montana was brutal. The cold was like nothing I'd experienced in Ohio, and there were days when the wind cut through every layer I could manage to put on. But there was something honest about it, something clean. The cattle needed tending regardless of the weather, and I found a strange satisfaction in the routine, the necessary work that couldn't be postponed or delegated. Spring brought calving season, and with it a kind of miracle I'd never witnessed. Watching new life emerge, seeing the protective instincts of the mother cows, understanding my role in helping these animals thrive, it connected me to something fundamental that my years behind a desk had never touched. By summer, I was brown from the sun and stronger than I'd been in decades. My hands were calloused, my back was sore most evenings, and I'd never been happier. One evening in late July, as I was doing the final check on the cattle, my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer. "Mom." My blood turned to ice. It was Kyler, but he sounded different. Desperate. What do you want, Kyler? I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I need help. Part of me wanted to hang up immediately. But the mother in me, the part that remembered teaching him to ride a bike and reading him bedtime stories, made me listen. What kind of trouble? The FBI raided my office last week. They're saying I'm part of a larger scheme to defraud elderly investors. Mom, I'm looking at serious prison time if I can't make restitution. How much restitution? $3 million. The number hung in the air between us. $3 million that he wanted me to give him, the son who'd tried to steal my inheritance, who'd publicly humiliated me in court, who'd cut me out of his life until money entered the picture. Please, Mom. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I'm your son. I'm all the family you have left. Then he started trying to manipulate me with childhood memories. Remember when I was 8 and broke my arm falling out of that tree? You stayed with me all night in the hospital. Remember when I was scared of the dark and you'd read me stories until I fell asleep? That little boy who loved you is still in here somewhere. I let him talk, let him try every emotional trick he could think of. When he finally ran out of words, I responded calmly. Actually, Kyler, you're wrong about that. I have Rex and Stella and the ranch hands. I have Camden and his family. I have neighbors who bring me soup when I'm sick and help me fix fences when storms blow them down. I have a whole community that accepts me as I am. But I'm your blood. Blood doesn't mean anything if it's poisoned by greed and selfishness. So, you're just going to let me go to prison? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About the victims whose life savings he'd stolen. About the elderly people who trusted him and lost everything. About the choice between enabling his behavior and letting him face the consequences of his actions. Yes, I said finally. I am. The silence stretched between us. I hope prison teaches you something that I never could, I continued. I hope it teaches you that actions have consequences, that people aren't just resources to be exploited, that family is about love and respect, not just shared DNA. You're going to regret this. I doubt it. I hung up and deleted his number from my phone. 2 weeks later, I read in the news that Kyler had been sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. I felt sad, but not guilty. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices. That fall, Camden called with news that surprised me. Remember that investigation Juniper commissioned into Kyler's business dealings? Of course. Well, turns out that information helped the FBI build their case. Several of his victims have recovered portions of their losses because of the evidence your sister gathered. I sat down hard in my desk chair. Even from beyond the grave, Juniper was still protecting people. She would have been proud of you, Marigold, for standing up to him, for choosing what was right over what was easy. I hope so. I know so. As autumn painted the Montana landscape in brilliant golds and reds, I realized that I'd been at the ranch for over a year. A full cycle of seasons, of learning, of becoming someone I barely recognized from the woman who'd answered that phone call at 3:47 a.m. Rex found me one evening sitting on the porch, watching the cattle settle for the night. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling into the chair beside mine. "Just thinking about how much everything has changed. Regrets?"
None.
Well, maybe one. What's that? I wish Juniper could see this. See what her gift became. See who I became because of it. Rex was quiet for a moment. You know, Juniper used to sit right here in the evenings, watching the cattle, planning for the future. She'd talk about her dreams for this place, about the legacy she wanted to leave. What kind of legacy? She wanted the ranch to be more than just a business. She wanted it to be proof that you could succeed without hurting people, that you could build something lasting by doing right by the land and the animals and the folks who worked for you. I looked out at the peaceful scene before us. Cattle grazing contentedly, the ranch house glowing with warm light, the vast Montana sky painted with stars. I think she got her wish. I think she did too. The next spring brought new challenges. A drought threatened the water supply, and I had to make difficult decisions about cattle numbers and pasture management. But I'd learned enough by then to handle it, consulting with Rex and Stella and the other hands, but ultimately making the choices myself. When a neighboring ranch went up for sale, I surprised myself by considering expansion. The old Marigold would never have had the confidence to even think about such a thing. This Marigold spent weeks studying the numbers, walking the property, consulting with experts before making an offer. I got the ranch for a fair price, and with it came another 1,500 acres and a young couple, Jake and Miranda, who'd been working the land for the previous owner. They were skilled, hardworking, and grateful for the chance to stay on. "You remind me of your sister," Jake told me one day as we worked together to repair a fence line. Same way of listening to folks, same way of making people feel valued. It was the best compliment I'd ever received. By my second winter on the ranch, I'd established routines and relationships that felt as natural as breathing. Sunday dinners with Rex and Stella, and whoever else wanted to join. Weekly poker games with some of the neighboring ranchers. A book club with the women from town. I'd become part of a community in a way I'd never experienced in the city. These people knew me, really knew me, and they accepted me not because of what I owned, but because of who I'd proven myself to be. One evening in December, as snow fell softly outside my study windows, I was going through Juniper's papers when I found something I'd missed before. A letter addressed to me in her handwriting, but dated just a week before her death. Dearest Marigold, if you're reading this, then my plan worked. Not the plan to leave you money, that was the easy part. The plan to leave you the chance to discover who you really are. I've watched you for years, settling for less than you deserved, letting other people define your worth, being afraid to take up space in your own life. It broke my heart to see you so small when I knew how big your spirit could be. The ranch isn't really about cattle or land or money. It's about having a place where you can grow into yourself, where you can take risks and make mistakes and succeed on your own terms. It's about being surrounded by people who see your value and reflect it back to you. I hope by now you've fired that awful boss. I hope you've told off anyone who tried to make you feel stupid or small. I hope you've discovered that you're braver and stronger and smarter than you ever imagined. Most of all, I hope you've learned to love yourself the way I've always loved you. The ranch is yours forever, but more importantly, you are yours forever. Don't let anyone take that away from you again. All my love, Juniper. P.S. There's one more thing. Check the safe behind the painting of the mountains in my bedroom. The combination is your birthday. With trembling hands, I made my way to Juniper's bedroom. Behind the landscape, painting was indeed a safe. I enter my birthday, month, day, and year, and the door swung open. Inside were documents, but not the kind I expected. Adoption papers, medical records, birth certificates. My heart stopped as I began to read. Juniper wasn't my sister. She was my daughter. The papers told a story I'd never known. At 17, I'd had a baby and given her up for adoption to a family named Vexler. The baby I'd given up had grown up believing she was my sister, not my daughter. My mind reeled as I tried to process this information. The age difference I'd attributed to our parents having children far apart. The way she'd always looked after me, even from a distance. The intensity of her love and protection. She'd known. Somehow, she'd discovered the truth and had never told me. There was one more document in the safe. Another letter.
Mom.
Yes, I know. I found out when I was 25 and hired a private investigator to research my biological family. I've known for 15 years that you're my mother, not my sister. I never told you because I could see the pain you carried about the baby you'd given up. I could see how it shaped your decisions, how it made you feel like you deserved less, like you had to make up for some imagined sin.
But there was no sin, Mom.
You were 17 and alone, and you made the best decision you could for both of us. You gave me a chance at a life you couldn't provide, and the Vexlers were wonderful parents. I want you to know that I never felt abandoned or unwanted. I felt loved twice, by the parents who raised me and by the mother who sacrificed her own happiness to give me a chance. Everything I've done, everything I've built, has been with the hope that someday I could give back to you what you gave to me, a chance at a better life. You are the strongest, most selfless person I know. You are my mother and my hero, and I am proud to be your daughter. Please don't mourn the years we lost. Celebrate the love we've always shared, even when we didn't understand its true nature. Love always, your daughter, Juniper. I collapsed onto Juniper's bed, clutching the letters to my chest, sobbing with a mixture of grief and joy so intense I thought it might tear me apart. My daughter, the baby I'd given up, the decision that had haunted me for 40 years, the source of shame I'd carried like a stone in my chest. She'd grown up to be this remarkable woman who'd loved me enough to plan for my happiness even beyond her own death. The next morning, I called Rex and asked him to come to the house. When he arrived, I showed him the letters. "Did you know?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I suspected. The way she talked about you, the intensity of her concern. It was more than sisterly love. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Wasn't my secret to tell. Besides, she made me promise to let you discover it in your own time if you ever did." I spent the next several days processing this revelation. It recontextualized everything. Juniper's protectiveness, her detailed planning for my future, her understanding of my character. She'd been my daughter, watching over me, loving me, trying to heal the wounds that her birth had created in my young life. But gradually, the pain gave way to something else. Gratitude. Wonder. The understanding that even in death, Juniper had given me one final gift, the knowledge that the baby I'd grieved for all these years had grown up to be someone extraordinary. I'd given her life, and she'd given me the courage to live mine. 3 years had passed since that first phone call. 3 years since I'd been Marigold Vexler, insurance worker, living small and quiet in Cleveland. Now I was Marigold Vexler, rancher, landowner, community member, mother to a daughter who'd loved me enough to save me from myself. Rex found me one evening on the porch, as had become our tradition. "What are you thinking about tonight?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing. How strange life is." "How so?" 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd peaked at 35 and was just running out the clock. I thought I was too old, too set in my ways, too small to ever be anything more than I was. And now I know that was all nonsense. I was never too old. I was just too scared. Rex nodded. Fear will do that to a person. Make them think they're smaller than they are. Juniper knew that. She knew I needed something big enough to force me past my own fear. Smart woman. The smartest. As we sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky, I thought about all the people who'd tried to diminish me over the years. Richard, who'd convinced me my opinions didn't matter. Kyler, who'd assumed I was too stupid to manage my own life. Mr. Kirkpatrick, who'd treated me like a replaceable part in his corporate machine. They'd all been wrong. I wasn't too old, too inexperienced, too small, or too anything. I was exactly who I needed to be when I needed to be it. The ranch was thriving. The new property was producing well. I'd hired 3 new hands and was considering expanding into organic beef production. I'd become the kind of businesswoman I'd never imagined I could be. But more than that, I'd become the kind of person I'd never imagined I could be. Strong, confident, unafraid to take up space in my own life. Rex, I said suddenly, do you think it's possible to be grateful for betrayal? How do you mean? If Kyler hadn't shown his true colors, if he'd been the son I wanted him to be, I might have let him talk me into selling the ranch. I might have taken the easy money and gone back to my small life. You think his greed saved you from making a mistake? I think his greed forced me to find my backbone. Rex chuckled. Leave it to you to find the silver lining in your own son trying to steal your inheritance. There's always a silver lining if you look hard enough. Even in losing Juniper? I considered this. Especially in losing Juniper. Her death gave me life. Her love gave me courage. Her planning gave me opportunity. Even her secrets gave me peace. You've changed a lot from the woman who got off that plane 3 years ago. Have I? Or did I just finally become who I was supposed to be all along? It was a question worth pondering. That night, alone in the house that had become truly mine, I pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. Dear Juniper, I know you can't read this, but I need to tell you some things. Thank you for seeing in me what I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for loving me enough to save me. Thank you for being the daughter I gave away and the sister who gave back. I understand now why you never told me the truth about our relationship. You knew I'd have felt guilty, would have tried to make up for the past instead of embracing the future. You were right, as always. I want you to know that I'm happy. Really, truly happy in a way I've never been before. I wake up every morning excited about the day ahead. I make decisions with confidence. I treat myself with a kindness I spent years giving to people who didn't deserve it. The ranch is more successful than ever. The cattle are healthy, the land is productive, and the people who work here are treated fairly and paid well. I think you'd be proud of what we've built together. Kyler is in prison, as you probably know. I hope he's learning something there about the kind of man he wants to be when he gets out. I hope he finds his way to becoming someone you could have been proud to call your nephew. Most of all, I want you to know that your sacrifice wasn't wasted. The scared, small woman who gave you up for adoption is gone. In her place is someone strong enough to honor your memory and wise enough to treasure your gift. I love you, my daughter. I loved you when you were a tiny baby I held for 3 precious days. I loved you when I thought you were my remarkable sister. And I love you now that I know the truth about who you really were. Thank you for everything. Love always, Mom. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the safe with Juniper's other documents. Someday, maybe, someone would find it and understand the story it told. But for now, it was enough to have written it, to have honored the love that had shaped both our lives. I walked through the house with the letter still in my hand, seeing everything differently now. The way Juniper had arranged the furniture in the living room, she'd chosen pieces that would be comfortable for someone my height. The books on the shelves included several by authors I'd mentioned loving in our brief conversations over the years. The kitchen was stocked with my favorite tea, my preferred brand of coffee. Every detail had been planned with me in mind. Every choice had been made with love. I touched the wooden mantel above the fireplace, running my fingers along the grain. Had Juniper stood here thinking about the day I would do the same thing? Had she imagined me discovering all the ways she'd prepared for my arrival? The guest bedroom was decorated in colors I'd mentioned liking. The bathroom stocked with brands I used. Even the porch swing was positioned to catch the morning sun, something I'd mentioned enjoying in one of our last phone calls. She hadn't just left me a ranch. She'd left me a home designed specifically for me, by someone who'd paid attention to every detail of who I was and what I needed. The next morning brought new challenges and opportunities, as every morning did on the ranch. There were cattle to tend, decisions to make, problems to solve. But I faced them all with the confidence that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I was capable of. I was Marigold Vexler, rancher, mother, survivor, success story. And I was just getting started. Would you have kept the ranch or sold it for millions? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever been told you're too old to start over, remember, your story isn't over yet. Our book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain, is filled with powerful steps to help you rebuild and find joy again. Link in the description. If this story inspired you, smash that like button, subscribe for more incredible true stories, hit the notification bell, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything to us.